As soon as I signed the house over to my daughter, she smiled and said, "Thanks for the house, but I don't need you anymore. Get out." She had no idea that in 3 days she would be the one crying because. Before the story begins, please subscribe and give this video a like. I ask you, this is very important to me. It will help me create even more stories like this. And now enjoy the story. They say life is short, but when you're almost 70, you understand it's not just short, it's also complicated. You wake up with one set of thoughts and fall asleep with completely different ones. I always considered myself a person who stood firmly on the ground, without fantasies, without sharp turns. My whole life I walked a straight line: work, family, home, children. But with age I realized that lines break. And the more you hold on to the old, the more painful it is when it collapses. I live in Birchwood. It's not a postcard town without bright storefronts and trendy cafes. Everything is different here. Here even strangers smile at you. Here the cashiers at the store remember what kind of bread you buy and will give you change in small bills without you having to ask if they see you only have a card in your bag. I guess I got left behind here 30 years ago. My husband, Leo, and I moved to Birchwood when the children were still small. We wanted quiet, a normal school, a small garden under our windows. We weren't chasing careers. We just wanted to live peacefully, and we did. Leo, my husband, he passed away 4 years ago. His heart right in the garage while he was changing the oil in our old Ford. It all happened in a matter of minutes. We had been together for 45 years. Since then it feels like I've been living with a phantom pain. Sometimes I catch myself talking to him out loud or leaving a cup of coffee on the counter for him out of habit like I used to. I work at Zoe's Fabrics. The owner's name isn't Zoe, it's Mr. Peterson, but he named the shop that to make it sound warmer. I've been the manager there for 25 years. People come there not just for fabric but just to talk. It often happens that way. A woman stands by the bolts of cotton and tells me that her son has started drinking again, or her husband left her for another woman, or that her mother is 82 and her memory is getting worse. I listen. I don't give advice, I just listen. And over time I've become a sort of fabric psychologist in town. No couch, but a roll of fabric and a cup of tea in a paper cup. Leo and I bought our house back in the 90s. We paid it off as we could, with delays, with borrowed money, but we paid it off. A 2-story house, 3 bedrooms. An apple tree in the yard. Leo planted it himself. I still make apple butter, only now almost no one eats it. We have 2 daughters. The eldest is Clara. Everything in her life is in order. A hair salon in the center of town. Her husband, Mark, works in insurance. Their children, Emily and Jacob, are teenagers. From childhood, Clara was direct and determined. Even in school, she was cutting the neighbor's hair, saving money, not asking anyone for anything. She and Mark bought a house before the children were born and never burdened us with requests or debts. And then there's the youngest, Sarah. She's 38, but if you look at her, you might think she's 17. She's our dreamer. As a child, she drew animals that she made up herself. In college, she changed her major 3 times and never graduated. Her hair has been every color except it seems black. Now she works as a sales assistant in an electronics store. It's her longest job, almost 2 years. She was married to Greg, a programmer, a peculiar man but kind, though in everyday life like a child. They divorced 3 years ago. Their son Sam was 7 then. Now Sam is 10. Greg pays child support but irregularly. Always some contracts, projects, problems. After the divorce, Sarah has moved 4 times. Each time for a new reason. The neighbors are noisy, the neighborhood is inconvenient. There's mold in the bathroom. But I understand it's about the money. Each time the apartment is cheaper. And the view from the window is sadder. Now she and Sam live in a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. During the day it smells of detergent. At night the machines hum. Sam is a miracle. A smart, calm boy, he loves books and building model airplanes. He has green eyes like Sarah's, light, perpetually tousled hair. He comes to my place on Wednesdays and Saturdays. We bake cookies, read, sometimes do homework. Sarah picks him up late, often straight from work, tired, with dark circles under her eyes. I watch the 2 of them disappear into the darkness at the bus stop, and my heart aches, as if I'm once again seeing a child off into the unknown. And last Thursday, everything went off plan. Sarah came without Sam. It was already clear something had happened. I immediately saw that face, as if the little girl who had gotten lost in a store and was afraid to admit it had returned. We sat in the kitchen, drank tea, talked about the weather, about her new haircut, about how Sam was reading faster. Then there was a pause and suddenly she said, "Mom, I don't want to, but I really have nowhere else to go." A pipe burst in our bathroom, flooded everything. We can't live there. She had found a new apartment, a decent one, but she needed a security deposit for 2 months and the first month's rent. $120,000. She only had 30. I was silent. A few months ago, I had already paid for her car repairs. In the winter, for the overdue electricity bills. And what was before that, I no longer remember. I never kept track. She's my daughter after all. But my pension and my salary at the shop are not a bottomless well. I said carefully, "Sarah, honey, I'm not sure I can find that kind of money right now. Maybe Greg can help? He's his son too, after all." Sarah shook her head. "I called him. He says he's between projects. No money. He promised in a month, but we can't wait. We've been sleeping on my colleague's sofa for 3 nights. Sam isn't getting enough sleep. His grades are dropping." I looked at my daughter and saw the same frightened face, the same little girl. Only now she was asking not for a candy but for a home. I sighed and asked, "The apartment you found, is it at least decent?" Sarah nodded, hope in her voice. "Better than the last one. 2 rooms. Sam will have his own closer to school. There's a balcony, I can put flowers there." She talked and I thought about how many plans she had had. How many times she had moved in search of a better life, and everything had ended up worse than before. "All right," I said. "I'll help. But Sarah, this can't go on forever. I need to know that you and Sam will finally find some stability." She nodded, holding back tears. "Mom, I understand everything. I got a second job on weekends. They promised me a raise at the store in 6 months. I'll pay you back for everything." I shook my head. "It's not about the money, Sarah. I just can't sleep peacefully, knowing that you could end up on the street." She left with a check and hope in her eyes. I stood in the hallway for a long time, looking at the photographs on the wall. Leo with the girls by the river, Clara at her graduation, Sarah with Sam in the park. I didn't know that this would be the beginning of the end. The next day, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest. I knew I was going to do what had been brewing inside me for a long time. I just hadn't admitted it out loud. I got up early as usual. I made myself coffee, sat in the kitchen and looked out the window. The apple trees in the garden were already blooming. It was quiet and empty. I thought, if something happens to me, who will be there for Sarah? Who will help Sam? Clara is kind, but she has her own family, her own children, her own hair salon. Sarah was always the younger one, in a secondary role. And then I took out an old phone book and found the number of Mr. Thompson, a lawyer, our old acquaintance. He had helped us with the documents when Leo and I bought the house. "Helen, hello?" he said when he heard my voice. "Something serious? Can we meet?" I asked. "It's better in person. I'd like to discuss the house documents." "Of course. Come on Thursday morning. I'll be in the office." I took a day off from the shop, didn't tell anyone anything, just went. Everything inside me was clenched, but I felt it was the right thing to do. Mr. Thompson met me like an old friend, sat me in an armchair, offered me tea and listened. "I want to make a deed of gift," I said, "to transfer the house to Sarah, but to remain living here until the end of my days." He immediately became serious. "That can be done," he said. "There is such a mechanism, a transfer with a right-of-life estate. But Helen, you have to understand, legally the house will belong to Sarah. She will be able to sell it, mortgage it, rent it out. Of course, taking into account your residence, but still, she will be the owner." I nodded. I knew. But it seemed to me that maybe this would help Sarah finally grow up, feel a sense of responsibility, stop flitting from one rented corner to another. "I understand," I answered. "But I want to give her this chance." Not just for her but for Sam. A child needs stability. Mr. Thompson took off his glasses and looked at me attentively. Are you sure Sarah is ready? That's something you don't expect won't happen. No, I said honestly. I'm not sure. But if we always live in fear, we will never pass anything on to anyone. We have to take a step sometime. I want to do it while I'm alive. He sighed. All right, then I'll start the preparations. The papers will be ready in a few days. We'll make it all official. When I left the office, a light rain was falling. It was cold, but inside I felt a little lighter. I had made a decision that I had been carrying within me for a long time. I had done what it seemed to me I had to do as a mother. Sarah came on Friday evening, just as she was bringing Sam. I had baked his favorite cookies and an apple pie. I wanted to make this evening special. She was a little late, as always. She came in hastily, her hair gathered haphazardly. There was fatigue in her eyes, but also some excitement. Mom, I'm sorry I'm late. We had a sale at the store. I was held up with customers. But everything is fine, honestly. Sam silently sat down at the table and began to assemble a model airplane. He was at an age where words are few but feelings are strong. I watched him carefully insert the tiny parts and thought, I'm doing all this for him. I waited until they had settled in a bit. Then I said, Sarah, can I have a word with you? We went into the hallway. I took a folder with documents out of the closet and handed it to her. I've signed the house over to you. It's all official. You now have a home. A roof over your and Sam's heads. Only with one condition. I live here for as long as I have left. She froze. On her face was an expression I rarely saw. A genuine gratitude mixed with fear. Mom, are you serious? The whole house? Yes. I've had it all formalized through a lawyer. You are now the owner, but with my right of residence. I want you to feel secure. She suddenly hugged me tightly, and I felt her shoulders trembling. She was crying. Mom, I don't know what to say. This is more than I could have imagined. I promise everything will be different. Everything will be fine. I nodded, holding back my own tears. I wanted to believe her. But later that night, lying in my bed, I looked at the ceiling and thought, what if I made a mistake? What if trust is not a gift but a trap? But it was too late. The decision had been made. There was no going back. It all started with little things, the kind you don't even notice at first. The day after our conversation, Sarah came to me later than usual. She left Sam, said she would be late at work, and then she had a meeting. I nodded, didn't ask for details. Sam and I sat, baked cookies, watched an old movie. He wasn't as talkative as before, but he still gravitated towards me. Sometimes he would just take my hand and be silent. And that was enough. On Sunday, Sarah came for him close to midnight. She seemed excited, but in a good way. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes were shining. She sat in the kitchen, poured herself some tea, and suddenly began to ask questions. Mom, when was the roof last repaired? And how old is the house exactly? And is everything okay with the heating? I didn't understand at first what this was about, but I answered. She listened attentively, as if she were memorizing it. I'm just thinking about the future, she said, noticing my gaze. Maybe we'll do some renovations for Sam, change the wallpaper. I nodded. Renovations are good. I was glad that maybe she had really decided to settle down. But a couple of days later, I came home from work and saw a strange car near the house. A light-colored, expensive car. A man in a jacket was standing in the yard, looking at the facade. And on the porch was Sarah with a folder in her hands. Mom! She turned, as if she hadn't expected me so early. Meet Mr. Clemens, a real estate agent. He's just appraising the house. Just in case. I froze. Just in case. I asked, are you planning to sell? Not yet. Just to find out how much it's worth. We have to plan how to live after all. I slowly took off my coat, walked past them without greeting Miss Clemens, sat in the kitchen, and was silent for a long time. Then Sarah came in nervous. Mom, don't look at me like that. I'm just curious. The house is mine now. I need to understand what I'm dealing with. And you weren't going to discuss this with me? You said it yourself, it's mine now. And I didn't say I was going to sell it. Not yet, I clarified. She sighed. Mom, don't start. Everything will be fine. Then I still hoped that it was just an impulse, that she would cool down. But a week later, they started removing the wallpaper in the house without my knowledge. I came home from work, went up to the second floor and froze. In the room where Clara used to sleep, 2 workers were tearing the paper off the walls. Scraps on the floor, dust, stepladders. Excuse me, who are you? I asked. We're here on the owner's order. Renovations? One of them answered without even looking at me. What kind of renovations? We were told to prepare for sale. To freshen it up. You'd better talk to Sarah. I flew out of the room, took out my phone. Sarah didn't answer. I wrote her a message. You thought it necessary to start renovations without even warning me. The reply came 10 minutes later. Don't interfere. This is necessary to sell it for more. I sat in my kitchen, among the familiar smells and photographs on the walls, and suddenly I understood. I was no one here anymore. The piece of paper I had signed had erased 30 years of my life. The house, into which Leo and I had invested ourselves, was being turned into an object. In the evening, Sarah came, not alone, but with some well-groomed man in a tie. Mom, this is Mr. Larkin. He's interested in the house. I'd like to show it to him. I didn't get up from my chair, just looked at her. Are you going to sell it right now? He's offered a good price, a very good one. Sam and I will be able to buy a small apartment, and there will be some left over. I'll find you a cozy 1-bedroom on the first floor, closer to the center. I'll take care of everything. And me? I asked. My life, my things, my memories? Mom, she sighed. It's just walls and a roof. It's important that everyone is comfortable. And you said it yourself, it's hard for you to be alone in a big house. I said I wanted to stay here. And you said, thanks for the house. Now it's mine. Mr. Larkin, to his credit, froze at the door, looking awkward. Maybe I should come back another time, he muttered. No, come in, Sarah answered. Mom, don't make a scene. I stood up slowly, as if with difficulty, and said, all right, let him look. Let him see how you're kicking your mother out of the house where she has lived her whole life. They went upstairs and I stayed downstairs. I couldn't move. It felt as if I had been pulled up by the roots and left to lie on the side like a useless branch. They walked around the house for almost 40 minutes. The voices came from above, muffled, as if they were talking about something very important. Then Sarah showed the buyer to the door and closed it behind him. She came back to the kitchen. I had been sitting there all this time, without even turning on the light, just looking out the dark window, as if some explanation could come from there. Mom, she began, please don't make it difficult. Everything is already decided. The deal is in 2 weeks. You calmly pack your things and we'll move you to a new apartment. Everything is paid for. Everything is convenient. Sarah, I said quietly, I didn't just sign a piece of paper. I believed you. I gave you everything I had. A house is not square meters, it's a memory. You took your first steps here. Dad died here. I've lived here almost my whole life. She was silent. Then she said, Mom, don't be dramatic. It's just a place to live. You'll be more comfortable in a new apartment. I slowly stood up, looked at her for a long time, and then said, no, I'm not leaving here. Even if the house is registered in your name now. You promised I would live here until the end of my days. That was the condition. Mom, she lowered her voice. I consulted with a lawyer. It doesn't say there that you have to live in this specific house. Only that you must have a place to live. I will find you a decent apartment. You will be safe. Safety is not everything, Sarah. I'm not moving. If you want to sell the house, you'll have to call the police and carry me out by force. She frowned, and for the first time, I saw in her eyes not confusion, not fear, but coldness. A real adult, indifferent coldness. Mom, she said, don't make me do this the hard way. The deal is in 2 weeks. You have time to think it over. Moving is not a catastrophe. And then I understood. She wasn't hesitating, she wasn't playing. For her, it was already decided. Her calm voice was not concern. It was a dictate. A couple of days later, a repair van arrived at the house. I heard the sound of a power drill, went up to the second floor. The workers were already breaking down the wall between two rooms. "What are you doing?" I shouted. "According to the project," one of them answered without stopping. "We're combining 2 bedrooms to make a spacious studio. The owner told us to." The owner? That was no longer me. I rushed downstairs, took out my phone and called Sarah. "Stop this immediately. Take the workers away. This is my house." The reply came in a message. "Mom, don't interfere. I've taken care of everything. You'd better leave for a couple of days. It's noisy and dusty here. Then we'll move your things to the new apartment." I sat on the sofa, the phone in my hand, surrounded by the roar and dust. And suddenly I felt that I was no longer in control of anything. I was being pushed out. Not openly but quietly, step by step. That same night, Sarah returned. Late. With her was the buyer, the same Mr. Larkin. I was sitting in the dark without the lights on. They came into the hallway, turned on the lamp, and then Sarah saw me. "Mom, why are you sitting in the dark?" she asked. Here Mr. Larkin wanted to take another look. "We're signing tomorrow morning." I stood up. "Sarah, are you sure you can live with this?" "Mom, that's enough. This is all for the future. Mine, Sam's, and yours too. The apartment will be warm, comfortable. You won't have to think about anything. And you will think for me?" "Yes." She looked away but didn't back down. "Thanks for the house, Mom," she said with a strained smile. "But now it's mine. I've decided it's time for us to move on. And you should move." These words calm without a scream, but in them was everything. Betrayal, indifference, and calculation. I didn't scream. I just said, "Then live with it. And let Sam see it too. Let him remember how his mother kicked his grandmother out of the house." "Don't exaggerate," she cut me off. "The house will be sold and you will move. You have no choice. It's all legal." But there was one thing she didn't know. The real twist wasn't in the deed of gift. It was in what the house was built on. My late husband, Leo, was a brilliant if eccentric engineer. Before he died, he became obsessed with a new experimental geothermal heating system he had designed himself. He installed it under the foundation of our house. It was his masterpiece, a complex network of pipes and regulators that drew heat from deep within the earth. It was incredibly efficient, but it had one fatal flaw. It was his creation, and only he understood its intricacies. He had left me a single thick binder labeled House Systems. It was filled with his handwritten notes, diagrams, and warnings. I had never looked at it. I didn't answer her. I didn't cry. I just went into the hallway, put on my coat, took my bag and left. I walked down the street and didn't feel my legs. Everything seemed somehow unreal, as if it were happening not to me, but to someone else. I didn't know where I was going. I just walked. And only when I found myself at Clara's gate did I realize where my feet had taken me. I stood at the gate and couldn't press the bell. My hands were shaking. On my shoulder hung a bag with only my wallet, phone, and keys. The very ones that no longer opened my house. My legs were buzzing with fatigue, but that wasn't the main thing. The main thing was that everything inside had become empty, as if a large, important native part of me had been torn out. The door opened on its own. Clara was standing on the threshold in an apron, with disheveled hair and warm steam behind her. It smelled of pies and cinnamon. She saw me and froze. "Mom, what happened?" I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. A lump in my throat squeezed everything inside. Instead of words, only a convulsive gasp and a rasp. And then tears. A lot of them hot in a torrent, like in childhood when you fall off a bicycle and endure, and then your mother takes you in her arms and it all comes out at once. Clara rushed to me, hugged me, led me into the house, sat me on the sofa and covered me with a blanket. "Mark," she shouted, "bring Grandma some tea with honey." Emily, prepare the guest room. The children immediately started bustling about, and she sat next to me, stroking my back, and just sat there. She waited for me to calm down. When I could say something, I uttered, "Sarah, she's kicking me out of the house." "My house?" Clara frowned. "What do you mean kicking you out? It's your house." And then I told her everything. About the deed of gift, about the conditions, about the renovations, about the buyer, about the words that are impossible to forget. "Thanks for the house, but now it's mine. Move." Clara listened at first in silence, then clenching her fists, and then she stood up and said sharply, "I always knew she was selfish, but this is no longer selfishness. This is vileness." "Don't, my dear," I whispered. "It's too late. The documents are signed. The house is hers. It's all legal." "It may be legal, but is it human? Mom, she has been using your softness her whole life. You forgave everything, you endured everything. And now to sell the house where you live? Without warning, without consulting you." I was silent. What could I say? Clara sat back down, took my hands. "You will stay with us. As long as you need. Forever if you want." "My dear, I don't want to be a burden to you. You have a family." "Mom," she interrupted, looking me straight in the eye. "You are our family. You are not a burden, you are our mother. And you have been treated unfairly. I will not let this go." In the evening, Mark came home from work. Clara told him everything. He listened without interrupting. Then he came up to me and just hugged me tightly. "Helen, stay with us. This is your home too. Until you decide what to do next." I cried again. Only this time from relief. From the fact that not all doors were closed. The next morning, Clara and I went to Mr. Thompson, the same lawyer who had handled the transfer of the house. He looked embarrassed. "Helen, I'm very sorry. I should have insisted on more precise wording. It's my mistake. Is there a chance to get the house back?" Clara asked directly. Mr. Thompson spread his hands. "Theoretically, yes. We can try to contest the gift if it can be proven that it was under duress or due to a misunderstanding. But the chances are slim. Everything was formalized officially. The signatures are there." Helen was of sound mind. "And what about the right of residence?" I asked. "Can she evict me?" "By the letter of the law, no," he sighed. "But the contract doesn't specify that it has to be this specific house, only that you must be provided with housing. Legally, she can give you an apartment and be in the right." I sat as if I had been hoping all this time that a miracle would happen. That Roman would say, "There's been a mistake. Everything will go back to the way it was." But there was no miracle. We left the office in silence. It was drizzling outside, and it seemed to match the mood, wet, gray, formless. Clara took my arm. "It's okay, Mom. We'll fight. You're not alone." I nodded. I didn't need to get the house back. I needed to get myself back and understand who I was now that everything I had built for 30 years had been taken away by my own daughter. On the third day of my stay at Clara's, the phone was ringing off the hook. First, Zoe from the fabric shop called, then Galina, a neighbor from our street. Then Marina, the one who always comes for ribbons and talks about her grandson. They all asked the same thing. "Helen, is it true that you no longer live in your house? That Sarah is selling it? That she kicked you out?" Birchwood is a small town. It's enough for one piece of gossip to hit the market, and by lunch it's in the pharmacy, the clinic, and the hair salon. At first I wanted to be silent, to brush it off, but one day I said it out loud. "Yes, she kicked me out. From my own home." After that, the talk only intensified. At the store, my colleagues looked at Sarah differently. Even her boss, a stern woman, squinted suspiciously and said, "Respect for one's parents is not an old-fashioned rule. It's a foundation." Sam understood everything first. He didn't ask, didn't throw a tantrum, didn't sulk. He just became quieter. At our next meeting on the weekend, he was silently eating his pies and suddenly asked, "Grandma, are you really living at Aunt Clara's now?" "It's true," I nodded, trying to speak calmly. "Temporarily. Mom said you wanted it that way, that it's better for you there." I took a deep breath. Sometimes adults pretend that everything is going according to plan so that others won't be hurt. He nodded, but from the expression on his face, I understood. He understood everything. Everything. The next day, the principal of Sam's school called me. His voice was worried. "Helen, I'm sorry to bother you, but Sam is refusing to go home. He's sitting at the entrance and says he wants to go to your place. We can't reach Sarah." 20 minutes later, I was there. Sam was sitting on a bench with his backpack in his arms. He saw me and ran up. "Grandma, can I live with you? Just for a little while. I just don't want to go home. It's empty there." I hugged him, held him close. "Hush, my dear, we'll figure it out." At that moment, a car pulled up. Sarah jumped out, disheveled, on edge. "Sam, what are you doing? Why didn't you go home?" "I want to go to Grandma's," he shouted. "I don't want to be with you." "Don't shout." She grabbed his shoulder. "You don't know what you're doing." "No, Mom," he pulled away. "You're the one who doesn't understand." I stood to the side, not interfering. Then I approached them. "Sarah, calm down. Sam is not a toy. He's hurting. He sees everything, he hears everything, he understands everything." She looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, there was no arrogance or irritation in her eyes, only fatigue and fear. "Mom, do you really think I'm a monster?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I think you've gotten yourself into a very deep mess and you're starting to drown. And when you're drowning, you grab onto anything, even if it's the hands of someone who loved you." We fell silent. Sam came up to me again and said, "Can I stay with you? At least for a few days." "Of course, my dear." Sarah stood nearby, her eyes downcast. I led my grandson to the car, and he didn't even look back. And she didn't stop him. In the evening at Clara's, I told her what had happened. She just shook her head. "Well, that's it. Now the whole town will know. Sam will tell everyone himself. People believe children more than adults." "I don't care anymore," I sighed. "A house is not a home. The main thing is that the boy doesn't lose respect for himself, that he doesn't grow up thinking that betrayal is normal." Clara hugged me. "Mom, maybe this is a new home? Us, this sofa, the smell of your pies. It's not the buildings, it's the people." I smiled. Not from joy, but from the fact that at least someone was left by my side, someone real. A couple of days later, Sarah called. Her voice was broken, as if it were cracking on every word. "Mom, we need to talk. In person." I could hear how hard it was for her to hold on. We agreed to meet in a cafe near my shop. Not at home, not at Clara's, on neutral ground. I arrived early, sat by the window, ordered tea with honey. The rain was dripping down the glass. Rare passers-by were huddled in their scarves. The wind was chasing the leaves. Everything seemed to suggest, the conversation will be cold. Sarah arrived late, without makeup. Her hair was gathered haphazardly, her eyes were red. She sat opposite me, was silent for a long time, looking into her cup. "He wants to live with Greg," she said finally. "Sam. He's filed a petition with the court to review custody." I'm in shock. I didn't expect it. I was silent. I didn't know what to say, or I didn't want to say what I really thought. "I can't cope," she exhaled. "At the store, after everything, they look at me as if I were a thief. The owner said that maybe I should take a leave of absence for an indefinite period." "You understand?" I nodded. It was all to be expected. After such a story in a small town, only the deaf are silent. I tried to get a loan against the house. The bank refused. They say they don't want to get involved with a property that has such a resonance around it. One agent even said the house has become toxic. Can you imagine? She gave a bitter, empty laugh. "Mom," she said, finally looking up, "I've ruined everything. Everything. And I've gotten nothing." I took the cup, took a sip. "You ruined it not because you wanted to sell the house, but because of how you did it." Quietly, vilely, with a smile. "You could have talked, explained. I might have understood. But you decided, I need it, so everyone else will have to move." "I know," she nodded. I realized that when Sam packed his things and left without a scream. He just left. We sat in silence for a minute or two. Then she spoke again. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I wouldn't forgive myself. But I don't know what to do anymore. I've lost everything. Not everything, I said. You're alive. You have a son. You have me. But if you want someone to stay by your side, start with honesty. Not with an attempt to replay everything, but with an admission. To yourself first and foremost. She nodded, barely perceptibly. What do you want, Sarah? To get the house back. That won't happen. To get Sam back. Maybe, but I'm afraid not anymore. And most importantly, I want to get you back. A lump formed in my throat, but I swallowed it. I'm here, Sarah. I'm always here. I won't disappear. But I won't live in a lie, and I won't protect you from the consequences either. I understand that. That evening, I went to the kitchen, sat at the table where Clara was making dumplings and said, I want to go back to the house. Clara froze. Are you sure? Yes. I don't want to run away. I want to be near Sam. I want Sarah to know that I'm not taking revenge. I'm standing. I'm living. I'm a mother. And if she didn't finish. Then I'll see it and draw my conclusions. But if I don't give her a second chance, who will? Clara looked at me for a long time, then nodded. I don't agree, but I'm with you. 2 days later, I returned to the house. Sarah had prepared everything, tidied up the rooms, removed the boxes, repapered the wallpaper in my bedroom, even hung my old photographs back. Everything looked as it had been. Almost. This will be your part, she said. No one will enter here. You are the mistress. Not the mistress, just a mother, I corrected her. Sam came in the evening with a backpack and a bag of books. I was thinking, he said seriously. I'll stay with you for a while, and then I'll decide. I didn't ask with whom he would stay. I just hugged him and felt how important it was for a child's voice to be heard in this house again. Life in the house began to flow differently. Not like before, as if everything had started from a clean slate. Only this slate was crumpled with creases, with stains, but still usable for writing. I would get up early, make breakfast for myself and Sam. He was laughing again, eating pancakes with jam, asking 100 questions in a row. The lightness that had long been absent had returned to his voice. Sarah was trying. It was clear that she was sincere, not intrusive, not for show. She tried to be at home, to help, to consult. She would ask, Mom, do you mind if I hang a new curtain in the bathroom? Mom, is it okay if I come into your room to wipe the windowsill? The intonations were different. She was no longer commanding. She was asking, learning to be an adult again. One evening, she came into my room and sat on the edge of the bed. I was knitting a scarf, a gray, calm one, for Sam. Mom, I've signed up for a therapist. That's good, I answered. I want to understand why I ruined everything. Why I wanted to break free so much that I destroyed what was holding me. I was silent. Let her talk, let her finally hear herself. I was always afraid of being weak. I thought if I asked, it meant I had lost. If I shared, I would become dependent. And now I understand that's exactly why I became so lonely. She fell silent, then added, Thank you for not turning away. I looked at her. In this adult face, the features of the girl whose pigtails I had once braided reappeared. You are my daughter, Sarah. I can be angry, I can be tired, but I can't stop loving you. Spring was coming into its own. The garden was waking up. The first leaves, the damp earth, the chirping of birds. I went out onto the porch with a cup of tea. Sam was reading a book, sitting on the steps. Sarah was pruning the branches of an old apple tree in the garden. Everything was quiet, without words. But in this silence, there was more meaning than in any conversation. Sometimes people lose each other not because they hate each other, but because they don't know how to be close. And then they learn. Slowly, through pain, through mistakes. This house is no longer legally mine, but it has become mine again in spirit. Here is my grandson, my daughter, and me, the one who went through betrayal and did not break. A month later, Sam and I went for a walk in the park. He took my hand. Grandma, you know, I was thinking, I'll stay with Mom after all. She's gotten better. But I'll come to see you every day. I nodded, holding back my tears. That's right, Sam. The main thing is to be honest with yourself. He smiled. You know, you're like an anchor. No matter where we're tossed, you hold on. And in the evening, the whole family made dumplings, laughed, argued about who had made them crooked. The radio was playing an old song, and I looked and couldn't believe that just a month ago it was empty here, as if after a fire. I didn't get the house back, but I got my family back. And that's more than walls. That's life. If you enjoyed the story, please write your opinion, how you would have acted in her place, and also write the word revenge if you watch the video to the end. It's important for us to know that our viewers watch the videos to the end. It helps to promote the video and motivates us to create stories more often and more interestingly. Stay with us, we tell not fairy tales but real life.